When you're making long form content, I found that if you plan out the long form content to basically be chopped up into shorts, so basically have a story structure to where you have the beginning, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and then the conclusion, right? Each of those parts can be cut up into shorts, and then you can post those. That way people only get a snippet of it, and then they'll go watch the full video.
And welcome to another episode of the Go Sokal podcast. I'm your host, Katie Welch.
And I'm your host, Chris Mullally. And today we have guest Andrew Bentley, who's a videographer and editor at Sokal. Before we get started, Andrew, tell the guests a little bit about yourself. What are you passionate about these days? What really fulfills you about your job, both in and out of the office?
I'm very passionate about traveling, parkour, and videography and creating stories through photos or videos. I've been loving all the new projects that we've been getting here with our non-automotive clients, going to cool places like Fantasy Lake to do some fun trailer-inspired spots where we recreated Baywatch, and then also being able to go on the Durham Bulls Stadium and actually go on the field and everything and have cool opportunities like that. So it's been nice to see how we're shifting.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of you guys' new spots you guys have been doing, and I will say, like, they are just so cutting edge, and they really, I mean, they don't look like anything else I've ever seen before.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we've been putting a lot of work in to try and make them stand out now.
Yeah, I think you guys are really knocking it out of the park. And for those that are listening or watching, you can go to the Sokal YouTube page and check out some of the work that Andrew's referencing.
Andrew, from the research that I've compiled and from my experience in videography working on the marketing side of things, I've found that there seems to be three different buckets of all videography that it all falls into. You got the pre-production, you got the production, you got post-production.
Right.
I wanted to focus just a second on the whole pre-production side of things, because I feel like sometimes that gets, I don't know if forgotten is the right word, but like
it's definitely overlooked.
Yeah,
for
tell
sure.
me a little bit about like what you guys do in terms of a pre-production what do you call it, routine, so to speak, and how seriously do you guys take that whole aspect of it?
So beforehand, before we started getting these non-automotive clients, we didn't really put too much into pre-production. It would basically be like a script and a rough guideline of how it should be put together in terms of like the video side. But now with the new automotive clients and also the things that they're wanting to do and the non-automotive clients, we've had to put a lot more effort into pre-production. So planning shots based off of the ideas that the client has pitched to us. We would basically take the script, make shots for them, make sure that everything's planned out down to the lens and the setup that we have. So that way when we get on set for production, it can be instant changing out and going nice and smooth.
So like when you are meeting with them for the first time, what are those conversations going like? Are they introducing shots that they want to have fulfilled? Are you asking them questions, or like how does that whole process work?
So it's a little bit of both. The clients can either have an idea that they already know for a fact that they want to do and basically recreate. So then we'll go off of the shots of the things that they've sent, like the references. For instance, the Baywatch one, they sent us that intro and they're like, we want to recreate this. So I came up with a couple shots, just basically screenshots from the trailer. And I was like, okay, this is what I think we can do. This is how we can shift it into Fantasy Lake. And then this is how we'll put it together. They were pleased with that because that's what they wanted to recreate. But some clients come in, they're like, okay, hey, we have this opportunity. For instance, like the Durham Bulls one, we have the opportunity to get on the field. So I began asking a bunch of questions. Since I've played baseball for 13 years, I knew a lot about fields and managing fields and stuff like that. So I came up with a bunch of questions that then the account coordinator asked the client. So these questions were like, will the bases be in the field? Because normally they take the bases out and use plugs. Will we be able to be on the field? Can we run on the field? Is it okay to do this? We had an entire shot list that we sent over just so that they had a good idea of what we would be doing on the field. Yep. And then we got that approved from there.
How do you deal with the things that you weren't planning on? You know what I mean? Like people entering your shots. Yeah. Like I know that you did the recent Charlotte shoot that was it in the fog and that Katie and I have seen, and it's freaking awesome. But like, you're having extra pedestrians in shots. Like, how are you dealing with all the extras that you can't control?
So usually with the things that we can't control, we just pivot a different way. So that's, for instance, with that footage, that's why I started panning from the buildings and everything, because they wanted to show off more of the location. And from just a static point of view on the car, you would just get from car to car just the road, and you wouldn't really see much of the buildings. So we had to account for like the height of the building and be able to just do different moves like that. But in terms of like pedestrians walking in, usually if we just stay at a wider aperture, then they'll be blurred out enough to where we won't have to do much. If, for instance, there's people that show up, and at Fantasy Lake, this actually recently happened, where they booked it, so they were out playing on the actual attraction. We made sure to get in touch with the organizer of that entire day, and then they had everybody pretty much sign a release form, just so that we had that just in case.
So we've brought up a little bit about clients and whatnot you've been working with, especially like Fantasy Lake and, you know, some of our other dealers and the Durham Bulls and all of this. So how do you go about ensuring that you're capturing their vision? I mean, because, you know, you obviously don't want to spend all the time shooting all this footage and then you put together this beautiful spot and then they're like, I hate it.
Yeah.
This isn't what I wanted at all.
Yeah.
Like, so is that part of like, is that really part of those conversations in the pre-production stage?
Yeah, so that would be all in the pre-production phase. Usually, ideally, you want to get all that hammered out in the pre-production phase. So that way, when you actually send them the shot list along with the script, they're like, okay, this is great. And then we make sure to relay the exact vision, if not with an actual storyboard, but make sure that they know exactly what we're shooting and it's exactly what they want. Sometimes when we get on to locations, we have to pivot because of the things that are there.
Sure, yeah.
But we usually make it work in the end.
So it's basically just setting up those expectations with the client
right
in the beginning,
right,
and not having those to come back and be like, we hate this. This is terrible. This is what we wanted at all.
Yeah, they're like, can you just redo the whole thing?
Yeah, not exactly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
So when you come to like capturing the client's brand and like their message, how do you make sure that, I guess, is conveyed as well in their spots?
That usually just comes in, I think, with the feel that they wanted from the beginning, as well as what the voiceover saying or what specific things that they would want to show off. Mm-hmm. For instance, if there's like detailed shots of a product that they wanted to show, like there's a cool possibility for a new product now that would be awesome to do videos, and I know that they would definitely want some detailed shots for what they have. Mm-hmm. But I guess it mainly just comes in with that clear communication in the beginning and then translating that into the actual producing of the videos.
You're constantly pushing yourself, it seems, to try different shots, different dynamic range, different color grading, different effects, both, I mean, we're talking like post-production as well, but like, right, how do you balance trying to push the envelope and also keep things constrained in your client's brand and message without kind of like getting frustrated sometimes, or I don't know if frustrated is the right word, but like without getting like, oh, I'm blocked. Like, yeah, I want to push this more, but you know what I mean?
Right. That mainly comes from, at least in my experience, testing the waters. So I would push the envelope pretty far at the beginning. So this is kind of why with a specific client, there's Gateway. So Gateway Kia, we work with them. They usually like their crazier, more creative things, and you can really push the envelope with them. But then if you go to any other Kia, it's more laid back because of the actual brand's guidelines. And the only way to find that out is by testing it. So I've basically had a lot of push and pull since I began here, but now I know pretty much what I can and can't do. Yep. In terms of different clients and different manufacturers for models and things. But yeah, if you want to get creative with it, just push it and figure it out.
What are you hearing like that's really popular amongst clients these days?
A lot of people really, really like the in-your-face graphics. So they want flashy, quick, cutting, upbeat spots nowadays. And I honestly think that's mainly due to social media because of the shortened attention spans, and you really need to catch people's attention within the first second of your video.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point about how video, you know, obviously people in the past have always shot, you know, spots and they've gone on to like TV, and that's the only place that you would see these. And now, you know, you're seeing these on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And so I know that's probably got to be challenging from the way that you mean, you're not that old, so you know, you're, but from the way, like, you know, people in the past have always shot commercials, and now it's like you got to, there's a whole different audience that you have to keep in mind.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting having it switch between platforms pretty much because, yeah, you have the TV route where it kind of just needs to hit all the points, all these specific deals or whatnot that you're actually having. But you also need to make it to where if you are to post it on social, then it's engaging from the get-go and it keeps the audiences in because it's hard to keep people engaged for longer than 2 minutes nowadays.
Yeah, and I mean, 2 years is just a different demographic, I think.
Right.
You know, like, I mean, I'm on social media more than my mom is, you know? I mean, so it's just a different demographic of, you know, trying to appeal to.
Right.
What are a couple other like video and or audio developments that you've seen recently that are like new, so to speak?
One of the trends that I see going around a lot now is actually incorporating AI. So they'll either extend a movie scene from a horizontal into vertical format, or they'll use that to basically have this, I guess it would be like a photo animation type style to where it's flashing back and forth and AI is changing like a person's hat or something in the scene, and it's just consistently flashing really quick. Those are kind of, I think, brought about since hyperlapses came in too, but now it's just AI integrated into that, which makes them, I guess, a little cooler to a lot of people nowadays. But that's one trend that I've seen, and I also see a lot more people diving into sound design. So they're using like risers, which adds tension, or hits, which would just add like that impact that you need at a certain point for the video, or they would use transitional whooshes and elements like that just to keep people engaged, especially at the beginning of their videos. They'll have like a whoosh with like a zoom in or something really quick to kind of like transition the people in and catch their attention for like off the get-go.
It's kind of like what people used to do with books, where
Right.
they would say like get their attention in that first couple pages,
Right.
then let the book unfold. You know what I mean? But
Right,
like,
exactly.
same kind of philosophy.
Yep, same exact concept.
Can I ask also, what's the so a rise and a hit? Is a rise like a whoop?
Yes,
like
exactly.
or like it could be a different tone, obviously.
Yeah,
but, and
that's
then a
exactly
hit
what
is
it is.
just like a
Yeah,
Or-
or it's
or
like
how would
those
you
deep
do it?
cinematic hits where it's like,
oh yeah, like
You
a
know.
bass drop or whatever they call that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you brought up an interesting thing about AI, because right now AI has just been such a hot button topic, and then with
Absolutely.
just
Yeah, it has.
across the board in all industries.
Yep.
And so I am interested. I would like to touch a little bit more on this like AI
okay.
concept and like where you think it's going. Like, how is AI
Yeah.
going to affect more, I guess, the videography aspect and even the editing? I'm sure that probably has to bring up. That's got to be somehow incorporated as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that with AI, it's actually helping a lot. It's not necessarily, I wouldn't really call it like a hindrance or anything. I wouldn't say it's good or bad. I'd just say it's a good tool to have if you use it for what you need. So with the editing and everything, I feel as though it makes it honestly a lot easier, especially with photos, because now you can create pretty much whatever you want. I've used it a lot and actually helped myself with specific composites recently. But with video, I think it's just going to add that extra touch of creativity, because they're taking away, I mean, they're not necessarily taking away, but they're allowing you to use more of your creativity without technical knowledge. So it does help in that sense. But it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I know we had Jason on previously. You know, we talked a lot about AI, and we just wrote a blog and put that up. You know, and it's, you know, I just think AI is just such a fascinating topic right now, and it's really all encompassing though. 'Cause, you know, when you talk about AI, there's different forms of AI, and there's all of these things. So, you know, I definitely think that I wouldn't necessarily have thought that AI, like in an average studio, yes, I know like Hollywood and whatnot, you know, of course they're using it, but like you guys here.
Right.
Across from my office, so like you're using, like, you know, the kind of the same idea, the same principles, which I think is just fascinating.
Yeah, so we don't actually use much AI in the office, but
Okay.
I've used it for like my personal projects and things, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's really, really easy to use, super user friendly, and they're just constantly improving on it. It's I just find it very interesting to see where it's going to go. I've even seen this basically entire short film made fully out of AI. So visual effects artists are really taking full advantage of it, because they can pretty much rotoscope out a subject, which basically means cut them out of the video and like have that as their own little layer. And they can turn that rotoscoped layer into whatever they want. So somebody literally made like an alien running around
Oh, wow.
their entire home. It was insane. They even made like a full-blown anime out of AI and a green screen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that horror movie in the main screens. In our last podcast that we did, as Katie mentioned, we spoke to Jason Jones, who's our CTO here.
Right.
And he's fascinated also by the subject and watching the trends and just following the different types of AI that are developing or whatever. But what I noticed is, in my limited experience about it, is that from a creative perspective, and Katie and Alex, who's behind the scenes, thanks for helping out, we're getting into now from marketing is we're using it a lot for script writing, for movies, for films or whatever.
That makes sense.
For blogs, things like that. And what I've noticed is it's so fast.
It's really fast.
And when done correctly, if you're already an okay or a good writer, like you're probably the best editor we've got on our team. And like, if you're already starting from that point, like once you use a program like that, you can cut out the fat, so to speak, and like
really fast. Yeah.
Get to like really good writing and deploy it or whatever. And it's your writing. It's like you're using the AI prompts, but like it's your voice in the end. You know,
Right.
you're designing it. So I think from a creative and marketing perspective these days, like from your department and from our department, it's a fascinating opportunity to like grow exponentially.
Right.
Because AI in general can just help our creative processes so much.
Right. No, I fully agree. I've used ChatGPT in particular for certain scripts for my own personal projects, and I would basically bounce ideas off of it and then take bits and pieces and include some of my words in there just to make a nice little script that I could read for voiceover. It's extremely helpful.
So speaking of, pretty popular trends right now, I know like we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, video trends are clearly not what they used to be, even 5-10 years ago. And I would think, with like the emergence of like TikTok and how, YouTube now has shorts and Facebook and Instagram are doing reels and all of this, I know that's got to put another element with the video editing and obviously the videography when you're on site, that's got to put a new layer and a new set of challenges have to come with that.
So with all of that integration between like TikTok and Reels, I think TikTok really pushed the envelope for everybody. So then Reels started coming out, and then now Twitter changed pretty much the entire game. They're having people be monetized for just views. So if you scroll past, you get money. And then YouTube implementing shorts. It's really taken video and put it into short form content. It used to be a lot of long form content. People would go onto YouTube to watch that as entertainment, but now they'll usually go on just to scroll through shorts, and those will drastically increase your viewership, your subscribers, however you want to do it. If you do it correctly and you get the first few seconds, you get them hooked in with something quick and fast and so many other things happening on screen, it'll instantly hook them in. And then if they like the content that you're talking about, they'll instantly go subscribe. It's interesting to see how it's gone from like used to be around 10 to 15 minute videos now down to like 3 with 20 shorts to go along with it.
Yeah, and I think it's real interesting. TikTok got real popular right before the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
And, that happened like in the fall of that year. And then obviously the world shut down 6 months later. And
Yeah,
I
it really
think,
took off.
Yeah, and I think that really, I know before, we were home all the time. Like I wasn't on TikTok that much, but once I was home every day and there was nothing else to do, I scroll through TikTok like crazy, and then people are posting like, recipes and, and I'm like, okay, well, I've nothing better to do than cook in my kitchen while I'm stuck here at home.
Right.
Can't go anywhere. So let's try all this. So I think that's a really interesting point is, with people advertising on TikTok and people, wanting obviously good quality videos for these ads because, they want to get people's attention. They want you to stop and watch them. So I think that's a really interesting concept of how, TikTok really has changed the game, I believe, for these other formats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you noticed that it's affecting the way you guys are script writing or the way you're approaching the videos you're making? Because a lot of stuff still goes broadcast from you guys, but then obviously we'll talk about it later, like kinetic videos. But like, have you noticed a change in the way you're writing or looking at your storytelling?
Not here, no. I feel as though here we're kind of still going along the same way because we just do a lot of broadcasting, but the way that we're kind of integrating into social media stuff is through the kinetic videos. I truly believe that's our main segue into it, because it's the really quick poppy, in your face, and it comes in 3 different formats. A vertical format, so a 9:16, and then it comes in a 16:9, that horizontal format, as well as a square. So you can post them across all platforms, square being for Instagram or Facebook, and then TikTok being that vertical format, which you could also use for shorts, or you could use for Instagram as well if you needed to, and then horizontal being for like an actual YouTube video or CTV, which would just be broadcast.
And isn't the thing that makes them unique that they use typography, but they don't use the spoken word? There's no voiceovers on these. And there's a reason why, right?
Right. So with the typography, you get a lot more dynamic with it, and you don't have to necessarily follow a voiceover and keep the story going, and you can shorten basically an entire script down into a few words. And those few words is what would be shown on screen to go along with some sort of car cut or some sort of dealership deal, like 2.9% MSRP on something,
I think it's also probably interesting to point out too, these are probably a lot more budget friendly than having
absolutely.
to get, a voiceover, a crew out necessarily. I mean, you guys may still go out and do running footage or something like that, but you're not going to take, actors and and all of that. They're just not as involved.
Right, exactly. It's pretty much solely done in After Effects, and it can be done with just text in a car cut, and you can create shapes and other things just to transition between each other, and that's pretty much all that goes into that.
I think something that's obviously budget friendly, but also just as effective. I mean,
Absolutely.
obviously there's times where you want that full 30-second, very in-depth, very, all the bells and whistles for whatever, but there's times where you just need something that can go on all social media. It can still be used for broadcast. It can go everywhere, and that's budget friendly. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
Obviously, you just brought up a good little evolution, like of the products that we're offering our clients, so to speak. But what are like a couple of tips you might be able to offer somebody who's trying to like make videos for the new generation, for this new era of shorter, sweeter, more impactful, maybe less VO, or like just more visual? I don't know. What would be maybe a couple of tips you might be able to offer?
I'd say probably just make videos that you really enjoy making. That way you can make tons of them. You want to put a bunch out, have the first few seconds be really in your face. My friend who's doing YouTube currently found out that if you, within the first 2 seconds, have at least 3 visual changes, so let's say like a zoom in, plus like an arrow pointing to something and some sort of text or graphic or some sort of something to change how it looks, you're pretty much 75% guaranteed to have more viewers.
That's awesome. That's a great tip right there.
That is a great tip.
Nice.
If there was another tip too, I would say when you're making long form content, I found that if you plan out the long form content to basically be chopped up into shorts, so basically have a story structure to where you have the beginning, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and then the conclusion, right? Each of those parts can be cut up into shorts, and then you can post those. That way people only get a snippet of it, and then they'll go watch the full video.
I never thought about that. That's an awesome idea. What we'll do a lot of times is we'll have our main long form content, anywhere, like take this podcast, for instance, half an hour, 35 minutes or whatever. Then we'll do these, 1 minute clips, 30-second clips of a really good like piece of advice or a tip or a quote or anything like that. Right. But I'm not necessarily thinking about the whole arc of like the story, like the intro, the conflict, the resolution. That's such a different way and a cool way of looking at it, because you can just like think of it like chapters when you're building.
Exactly.
It,
Yeah. I mean, that also works great though, posting just the best clips, because then people will be like, okay, cool. Most people actually just watch the best clips, and it's almost a compilation to them when they're just scrolling, and then unfortunately they don't go watch the full video, or if they do, they're like, oh, okay, there's that part. But that actually will bring a lot of viewership to your channel, and regardless, because it's good bits of advice that you're just putting out there that people enjoy. So relevant, relatable, and shareable. So relevant being with the times, for instance, like the AI stuff. If you post stuff about that, that'll usually get picked up. Relatable, anything that anybody can really relate to on any sort of level, they'll usually connect to more, because it's an emotional connection to your content. And then shareable, usually if you get the first 2 right, then it will be shared to other people who will want to see your content.
So obviously content's being produced, and you want to get it out there to people, and obviously the more people that see your content, they're going to come purchase for you and or share your stuff or
Right.
go to, you know, like whatever your business is doing. So do you have any tips on how to reach those audiences?
Sharing, posting. Usually a lot of people will find you and it'll be a lot of word of mouth if you're doing it on your own. I know that here we go out and we find a bunch of clients and we reach out to them. It's basically the same thing. You know, if you have a portfolio and you're posting enough things, it will reach the right audience, especially if it's the stuff that you just enjoy doing, because you'll be more willing to promote that work and in turn promote yourself.
What about like when you're dealing with clients and you kind of have a sense of who their audience is, but you don't until like that first meeting with them? Or like, how do you understand who their audience is? And are you kind of keeping in your mind when you're working on stuff like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, can you describe
absolutely. So for instance, let's say there's like a liquor company or something. Usually that'll be to the more mature audiences. So usually if you don't have their demographic already from like your initial meeting with the client, I try and tend to think about, okay, what are the aspects of their product and who can relate to it the most? Because at the end of the day, it's pretty much whoever is going to relate to your product, they will buy it.
So when you're working with clients, you're out in the field a lot. It's a lot of details going into every single shoot. You've worked it out. You're out there. What if you could take any piece of your gear, anything? What would you say is like your go-to? Like this is my baby. Like this is so useful.
You're
so
on
helpful.
a deserted island and had one
yeah,
piece
true.
of equipment.
Man, one piece?
What would you use?
Yeah, and why?
Shoot, well, I would need two pieces with the camera, like the camera and the lens.
Yeah.
Okay, we can
Dang.
we can consider that we can consider that one. Like because they go
Okay.
together. Yeah,
Okay,
they go
as a group.
together.
Yeah.
Okay, then definitely, I mean, recently my favorite thing to use has been my like vintage lens. So I have this 58 millimeter Helios lens. It creates some beautiful images, and I put that on my cinema camera, which makes it more of like a 90 millimeter because of the crop sensor. But it is gorgeous. I've taken it on my recent trip, even just all the way up to Canada and back, and just shot so much footage with it.
Wow.
Yeah, I would definitely take that with me.
Especially if you're on a deserted island.
Exactly. Then I could even see the planes in the sky. Be like, oh, there's one. Hey, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How would you describe to somebody who's maybe not I mean, obviously we want to have videographers listening to this particular podcast, but like, what if they're not? What if they're just in the marketing industry? How would you describe why that lens gives that kind of quality to your film?
So with that lens, I came to learn something recently, actually through TikTok. So with the lenses, there's something different between a video lens and a photo lens. So a photo lens will be pretty much sharp across the entire image. There won't be any like warping on the edges. There won't be much vignetting on the edges either. So it'll be really nice and clean. Mm-hmm. But with video, since video is super center weighted, there will be like some fall off, or there'll be some sort of chromatic aberration, which is like a little bit of a certain tinge of color on edges of like rocks or leaves or people. So that'll show up and it'll make it a little bit more stylized because it won't be so sharp on the edges. So with the vintage lens, this is a vintage photo lens back in the film days, like the film photo days. And it actually does that because this was before they were getting very sharp across the board. So I enjoy putting that into the film world, especially because this specific lens also has like swirly bokeh, which is like the out of focus lights. So it basically makes it swirl around a subject. It looks really cool.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned about, your gear, your favorite piece of gear and what you'd use. So obviously you guys also have been traveling a lot and taking this gear out on the roads and all of that. So what has been some of your kind of, I guess, I don't want to say favorite things you guys have been doing lately, but kind of, what is some of like the favorite, like I know you guys are doing running footage and you're doing like drone footage now and you're like all of these things. You have a plethora of things that you guys can offer clients. So what is kind of some of your favorite things that y'all are doing?
I love the running footage shoots, like absolutely love them. One of the recent ones that we did, we went to Charlotte and there were some unexpected things that happened, but we rolled with it and we were able to use our car rig, which is basically just some magnets that we attach to the top of the car, and then we can attach the gimbal to it with the camera on it as well, so we can control it from the car as we're driving. So we're shooting the car that's behind us. Yeah. So on this shoot specifically, we got to the dealership, and the first thing that we had to do was basically find this Google Map program that we could plan out a specific custom route. So we sat in the dealership for a few hours, planned out the routes, and then we went out that night because it was raining that day. And we had, I think, about 2 hours of clear weather. We started doing the first route. We did about like six laps of it, which, I mean, that's like, I think we hit around 10 blocks through that whole route. And we did that about 6 times. And then the fog started coming in, so we immediately booked it over to the second round and just like cranked that out. We had to do that with 2 different cars. I think we did like 4 laps each, and it was fantastic. It was so fun. We were scared of the gear though because it was getting drenched. And we're like, okay, we need to wrap this up before it gets too far.
Yeah, for sure.
I do know too that you have some clients that are out on the outer coast of North Carolina or south. What's that like, trying to shoot in salty conditions, or like, do you have any advice or any for somebody who's doing stuff like that? Yeah,
well, shooting down there, it's mainly the wind. There's the wind and the sand that'll do any damage, but honestly, it's not that bad. And it makes it easier just because it's so open. But then that also presents another difficulty with actually making it look pretty because it's so open and it's hard to get like that wide expanse unless you're super tall or high up and shooting down at a car type thing.
Do you have anything that you'd like to say in closing? Anything that you wanted to share just like about your experience as a videographer and editor?
I've just enjoyed growing. That's pretty much it. I've enjoyed growing here. I've learned a lot of new things. Really took a deep dive into After Effects with some animations, and trying to just learn from my coworkers and help them out with what I've learned as well, and just grow as a team.
And we've definitely learned from you as well, Andrew.
I'm glad.
Thanks so much for being on the podcast with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And thank you guys, as always, for listening or watching us. And don't forget to subscribe and share our content.
Have a great day.